Imagine showing up to climb a mountain and being told you need to pay a $15,000 death deposit. This isn't Mount Everest. Welcome to Mont Blanc. The Gouter Route is like a war zone of rockfall, and yes, people still show up in sneakers and yoga pants thinking that they're on a weekend hike. That is the exception to the rule. Many of the climbers who are there are highly experienced, and even they lose their lives each year. On the day that I recorded this video, there was an article in Explorer's Web about 2 climbers experienced who lost their lives on Mont Blanc. 2 French climbers, a 25-year-old woman and a 56-year-old man. Their bodies were recovered by the PGHM of Chamonix, recovered their bodies on a technical ridge of the Aiguille de Bonassé up Mont Blanc, requiring significant experience. Even some of the world's strongest mountain runners and ski mountaineers can get into trouble on Mont Blanc. I have a story later about Kilian Jornet. He's won some of the most prestigious ultramarathon races in the world, has been on Everest many times, and even he, yes, the Kilian Jornet, needed a rescue underneath the shadow of Mont Blanc some years ago, and I'll get into that story a little bit later. In May 2017, a 26-year-old South Korean climber, not a total beginner but not a pro either, fell into a crevasse on the Dôme de Gouter, part of the classic Gouter Route on Mont Blanc. He set out with a friend in the afternoon and vanished beneath the snow at 5 p.m. The PGHM rescue team from Chamonix arrived quickly on the scene by helicopter, but sadly, the victim died despite attempts to revive him. According to the preliminary investigations, it is said that it was a lack of security at the origin of the accident. The victim had been suffocated by the rope that was tied around his chest. He had fallen into the crevasse, was retained about 10 meters below the surface by his climbing partner, but the tension of the rope compressed his ribs and rib cage, causing the man's death. It's said that he had forgotten his harness in the valley and was not roped up properly. He wasn't on K2, he was just a short distance from the cafes and souvenir shops down in the valley below. And that's the thing, the town looks like it's a big vacation. It's a beautiful place to be, a lot of fun. It's a little bit like an alpine Disneyland. But Mont Blanc is known to be one of the most deadly mountains in the world, foot for foot, meter for meter. You can ride a train, a cable car, eat a croissant, and in a few hours later, you're halfway up one of the most dangerous mountains in the world and one of the most beautiful, where it all began. That accessibility creates some type of illusion that this mountain is somehow tame, that it's doable for anybody who comes interested in having an adventure. In 2022, the mayor of Saint Gervais tried to make a point. He proposed a $15,000 death deposit for any climber who came to climb Mont Blanc without proper gear or experience. People want to climb Mont Blanc wearing shorts and sneakers, he said, and that fee, it was to cover the cost of rescue and body recovery. In an article, a woman wrote about being told by a guide that Mont Blanc was just a hike. This is not a walk, she later wrote. She found out the hard way. She was told shortly later by a gendarme near one of the refuges that they should require people to have at least 6 alpine peaks under your belt before even thinking about climbing Mont Blanc. The most popular route on Mont Blanc is called the Grand Couloir, also known as the Corridor of Death. Rockfall Central. If you wait too long, you might get bowled over by falling rocks from above in the heat of the day as the snow begins to melt and loosens up boulders. So what most people do is they wait anxiously, and when the coast is clear, they run across as fast as they can, hoping for the best. Mont Blanc isn't just any mountain, it was the first where mountaineering officially got its start. Tucked beneath Mont Blanc's shadow in the resort town of Chamonix is one of the world's most elite mountain rescue units, the peloton de gendarmerie de haute montagne. I hope I didn't botch the pronunciation of that, because these are some of the bravest and most highly skilled individuals in the world, saving hundreds of lives each couple of years in and around the Mont Blanc region. This footage was found on a series that was filmed, absolutely captivating. It had me at the edge of my seat. Just the thought that these helicopters fly so close to danger, lowering the rescue members down to save people who, if they had not been found by these individuals, certainly would have died overnight. They're elite alpinists, helicopter pilots, medics, tactical specialists trained to operate in the deadliest alpine terrain imaginable. The Chamonix PGHM responds to more than 1,200 rescues, with calls peaking in the summer when tourists flood the range. Their courage is off the charts, dangling beneath helicopters, lowering deep into crevasses, saving lives, sometimes recovering bodies of individuals who were not so fortunate. They brave rockfall, icefall, whiteouts just to reach stranded climbers. But even with all their skill, they can't save everyone. Dozens still perish on Mont Blanc each year. There is so much activity that sometimes the main rescue team receives 20 calls per day for people in need of a rescue. When the mayor of Saint Gervais proposed that $15,000 death deposit, perhaps he had something there. In September of 2024, 2 Italian climbers and 2 South Korean climbers struggled on the summit of Mont Blanc for 3 days and finally succumbed to the brutal storm that raged and kept rescue teams from reaching them. Hope lingered as rescue crews waited anxiously, but finally when they got to the summit, almost all traces of the climbers had been covered by snow and wind. Slowly, one by one, the climbers were found just 100 meters below the summit. They'd taken the legendary 3 Monts route. They were prepared, they were skilled, they had experience, but even that wasn't enough. Officials say they died of exhaustion, a haunting reminder that on Mont Blanc, experience is no guarantee. Mont Blanc towers above Chamonix, the quaint little village in France that draws climbers and tourists from around the world, including myself in 1988 when I first climbed Mont Blanc as an aspiring mountaineer. I was young, full of ambition, dreaming to be a high-altitude cameraman on mountains such as Mount Everest, and Chamonix drew me 2 summers in a row to climb everything I could possibly get my hands and feet on. That was also the first time that I learned how to sell adventure. I was working for a TV station at the time and sold the general manager of the station that if I went to France, I'd come home with a series of videos about adventure in France, culminating with a climb of Mont Blanc. He bought it and I was off and running. It was at that time that I saw firsthand the kind of hold that mountains have upon people. It seemed like every single day or every other day there was a story in the local newspaper about someone who had been killed on a certain rock climb or on Mont Blanc or rock fall or in an avalanche. It was terrifying in some ways, but also one of the most fascinating things to be in the middle of where it's all happening, where some of the great climbers of the world came to get their experience. Mont Blanc was first summited in 1786 by Jacques Balmont and Michel Gabriel Picard. Their climb essentially launched the golden age of alpinism. In the center square, there is a bronze statue commemorating their historic first ascent. It drew me. I stood at its feet, dreaming myself of what it would be like to be on top of such a beautiful mountain. Mont Blanc is a pilgrimage for climbers and tourists from around the world, but it sure looks different than it did back in the 1700s. Every summer, hundreds cram into overcrowded huts. Climate change is melting the glaciers. And one thing to keep in mind that's really interesting and kind of raises some puzzling questions is the PGHM, a rescue by helicopter, is free. Now, if you were from out of the country going climbing there, it would be strongly advised to get global insurance for yourself just in case you lose your life and your body needs to be repatriated back home. That can be very expensive, as can some of the medical treatments that the PGHM brings you to, depending on what hospital they might drop you off at. But as you can see in this documentary, these people who just got a rescue, a father and a son, they said thank you very much and walked away without a bill or anything. Absolutely incredible. Here's the thing I ask myself, and I wonder if many people do the same, if because of the reliability of the PGHM, do you think that people maybe take it for granted, that they're thinking to themselves, well, if we get in a bit of a stir, we can just call for a rescue? It's hard to say. With 1,100 rescues per year, you know that there are many people who are so unprepared. You wonder if perhaps the mayor of Saint Gervais is right, that maybe these people should have to leave a $15,000 death deposit in the event that they need a rescue or in the event that they die in the mountains. What do you think? I think it's a great conversation to have. This is certainly one of the greatest infrastructures in the world for climbers that maybe other countries could follow. What if that were the case on Mount Everest or smaller mountains of the world like Mount Washington in New Hampshire or Mount Whitney in California, both of which we've done recent videos on here on Everest Mystery.
Ça tourne gauche.
You know, I promised you a story about Kílian Jornet needing a rescue. This goes back to 2013. It's important to understand that even the best of the mountaineers can get themselves into trouble sometimes, and thank goodness for the rescue services of the PGHM Chamonix, or people such as Kilian Jornet may not be here today if it weren't for them. Kílian Jornet was on a climb up the Frendo Spur, the north face of the Aiguille de Midi. Yes, I know it's not Mont Blanc, but it points out a very important note about the PGHM coming to the rescue when people are in need. Jornet and his partner Emily Forsberg were going up and attempting an ascent of the Frendo Spur on the north face of the Aiguille de Midi. They were attempting a fast and light climb. And now where this hits home for me is in 1988 with my friend Terry Taylor, a Welsh guide. We were climbing up the north face of the Aiguille de Midi, endeavoring to do the Frendo Spur. We felt there was too much snow on the mountain, so we climbed directly up the north face. Darkness started falling, the temperatures dropped dramatically, ice began forming, and Forsberg and Jornet found themselves in a dire situation, did not know if they would make it through the night with just a bivy sack. So they called the PGHM of Chamonix, and sometime after the rescue, Jornet was quoted as saying, "Once again, I got a lesson. The mountain decides." Sobering facts from one of the great ultramarathoners and ski mountaineers of our generation. And so that's it right there. It doesn't matter who you are, how good you are, how fast you are, how talented you are. The mountain ultimately decides. If not for the PGHM, many, many climbers, mountaineers, hikers, tourists would find themselves in incredibly difficult situations, and certainly many more lives would be lost. Mont Blanc is the birthplace of alpinism going back to 1786. Climbers with names like Whymper, Bonatti, and Thierry cut their teeth on the granite and ice of this massif. So what do we do with a mountain like Mont Blanc or Mount Washington in New Hampshire or Mount Whitney in California, both in the United States? They're so easy to reach, but so deadly, and people don't seem to learn, even though these mountains have been killing people for hundreds of years. What do you think? Do you think the mayor of Saint Gervais, they should have agreed to the $15,000 death deposit where he said too many pseudo climbers are coming to the area to climb on Mont Blanc with not enough gear and expertise? I'd love to see your comments. Be sure to leave it in the section below. If you found this video valuable, make sure you click the like button. And if you're not a subscriber, please be sure to subscribe now and check out the member section where there's plenty of exclusive content, and also over on patreon.com/Everest Mystery. If you're planning on heading to Mont Blanc, do your research, and just in case the mayor gets his way, be sure to have a $15,000 death deposit with you. Hopefully you won't have to use it. Be prepared, respect the mountain, do a good deed, don't ask for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Peace be with you.